There's a high-stakes conflict brewing over the world's largest oil reserves. Today, we're going to break down a report that alleges a major showdown between the United States and Venezuela. It's a story of covert strategies, political power plays, and a geopolitical prize that could totally reshape global energy.
It all kicks off with this number, 5,000. Now, the source we're looking at for this explainer claims this is the number of missiles Venezuela has deployed. It's being presented as a pretty clear signal that a threat is looming, but, a threat from who and over what exactly?
And that really gets us to the core questions this report is raising. Is this really about democracy, or is it a calculated geopolitical play for oil? And how on earth does India's prime minister suddenly get pulled into a power struggle happening thousands of miles away in South America? Let's unpack what the source is alleging.
To really get what this conflict is all about, the report tells us we have to follow the money. Or, well, in this case, the oil.
And this really gets to the heart of it. Venezuela isn't just some other oil producer. We're talking about a country sitting on the largest proven oil reserves on the entire planet. And according to this source, that's not just a factor in this conflict, it is the conflict.
So the report then frames this whole thing as a massive standoff between two very different leaders. Each one has a completely competing vision for the country's future.
Okay, so on one side, the report points to Nicolás Maduro, the sitting president. It highlights that the U.S. has labeled him a dictator, hit him with severe sanctions, and even put a $50 million bounty on his head for alleged drug trafficking. Then on the other side, you have María Corina Machado. The report describes her as the U.S.-backed opposition leader and alleges she's supported by what it calls the American deep state. The source also makes the pretty significant claim that she was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize and has promised to open up Venezuela to U.S. oil companies if she gets into power.
Okay, so we've met the players, but what's the game plan here? Well, this is where the report lays out what it claims is a multi-step U.S. playbook for regime change. The source breaks this alleged U.S. playbook down into 4 key steps that you can see right here. It says it starts with economic pressure, those sanctions. Then it moves to political isolation by branding the leader a dictator. Then it escalates to creating instability inside the country. And the final move, according to this report, is to push a preferred opposition candidate as the only real democratic choice. This is the exact sequence of events the source claims is playing out right now.
Now, just when you think you've got a handle on the story, the report throws a major curveball. It introduces a totally unexpected player, and suddenly we're shifting our focus thousands of miles away to India. And here it is, a direct quote that the report attributes to opposition leader María Corina Machado. She's inviting India's Prime Minister Modi to a free Venezuela, calling India a great democracy. Now, on the surface, you might think, okay, that's just standard diplomatic nice talk. But the source argues we really need to read between the lines here.
So this is how the source breaks down that statement. It doesn't see it as a compliment at all, but as a calculated move to get international legitimacy. The report basically frames it as a warning to India, suggesting that a Maduro government would, in its view, essentially be a puppet for U.S. interests. The implication here is pretty clear. Any future oil deals between Venezuela and India would be on American terms.
This table really spells out the dilemma for a country like India, according to the report's analysis. On one hand, you have the current situation, which means trying to navigate these tricky U.S. sanctions. But on the other hand, a potential future under a U.S.-aligned government might mean easier access to oil. But, and it's a big but, the source argues there's a huge trade-off. That access would allegedly come at the price of U.S. control over the supply. You'd be swapping one big geopolitical risk for a completely different one. All right, so after connecting the dots between the alleged military buildup, the oil reserves, the key players, and this surprise India connection, what's the ultimate conclusion of this report? What's the bottom line?
Well, the report doesn't mince words. It concludes that all this talk about a fight for democracy is, in its view, just a cover story for the real objective, a geopolitical play by the United States to control the world's largest oil reserves.
And so, that leaves us with the central question that this whole report poses. When you put all the pieces on the board, does this look like a fight for democracy or a war for oil?